I'm pretty sure you're curious what the fuck my title is even supposed to mean. It's a joke that I have often used with friends and family after the quarantines got extended well beyond the flatten the curve point. I used to say hyperbolically for humor that they wouldn't let us out until we had cured death. I said that specifically to be hyperbolic because I didn't think that any politician would actually say that or do that. In comes the mayor of Los Angeles, because of course it's California, and he has openly said that there will be some form of restriction in place until there is a cure for COVID. My assumption, and from what he's tried to clarify since, is that the restriction is the social distancing and mandatory masks to go anywhere or do anything. But that's the assumption of if they stop there, which, considering that they're even saying that, is kinda questionable at best at this point. I've been noticing for a while now that the Democrats have been, I don't know if this is because for protection of people, or if this is because they have this weird control over people fetish. But they have been doing a lot of stuff going above and beyond in a lot of these states. Michigan, for example, has been one of the worst states for the governor just assuming direct control over every little thing. Uh, Disease rates be damned. This is the first one where they've openly shown that they're willing to go very, very long into this process. And I'm sure that people will come back and say, well, the federal government should have done something, to which, no, they really shouldn't have. The federal government handled this in the way that they were supposed to. Trump actually did what he, as the president, should have, intentionally or otherwise. He he put a federal level suggestion for what should be done, and then let the states and the cities handle it as they individually needed to. The issue seems to be that the Democrats are going well beyond what any of them should be doing. Let's go back to LA for a moment. If Los Angeles does continue the the social distancing and the mandatory masks as a very base minimum, let's assume that that's all they're doing. If they continue that until there is a cure for COVID, which I would like to interpret as a working vaccine, but they could be going a bit more extreme. But again, let's give them absolute benefit of the doubt here. They're only doing social distancing and masks, and it's only until there is a working vaccine for COVID. That's still about a year out, and for a city as dense as LA, that's not feasible. It's barely feasible that we have lasted 2 months doing this. I don't see how we can handle a year of it unless you just want that city to fucking die. Uh, Business infrastructures are not built for that kind of thing. And I'm not talking economically, I'm talking feasibly, logistically. I'm not even getting into the economic ramifications of doing that, because just from a common sense standpoint, I don't see how you would. That we have done it for 2 months shows a lot of ingenuity on our part and a lot of patience on our part, because this was initially supposed to last for 2 to 3 weeks to flatten the curve. A phrase or propaganda piece, take your pick, that I have not heard in a while. I wonder why. So I just do not see how this can be done. And again, that's not even taking into account the economic ramifications of doing something like that. Because LA, a good chunk of their money is from tourism. And this is going to basically make tourism impossible. Now, the other side of the coin for that argument is that until there's a fucking vaccine, tourism isn't going to happen in the first place, which I would disagree with. It's going to be heavily reduced, but it's not going to be absolutely destroyed. If LA continues what the mayor wants to do, that will be destroyed at the very least in LA. Also, LA is where Hollywood is. Movies wouldn't be done, shows wouldn't be done, or there would be difficulties in doing it. A lot of businesses require that people not be close, but the social distancing aspect could not work in those. And I'm not trying to defend the entertainment industry. Lord knows I have more than enough issues with it. I'm just saying that is a good chunk of your revenue in the state of California, and you would be fucked if that kept up. So again, I don't see how this is possible just from a base logic standpoint. And that's not even getting into the fact that the people will openly revolt. California is one of the few places that I think they're openly willing to say something like that because so many of the people would be on their side. I do believe that a good number of Democrats, again, whether for humanitarian reasons or for control reasons, think this same way. It's just that California is more of a space that has made it so that you can openly say something like that without ramifications. Uh, like I've said, Michigan, there's a great example. The governor has all but said this same goddamn thing, and people are up in arms, literally, against her for it. What scares me is that now that LA has said this, and that this is their plan going forward, other Democrats will now be emboldened, and they will try these things, or just come forward and say, this is what they're doing, you can't stop us. And even in places like Michigan, Detroit, for as abandoned as it is still too dense to do something like that for the long term. And that's not even taking into account the rural areas, where if you do this on a statewide level, there's no point in the rural areas because they're already fine. You're just effectively making them dead. You're going to turn them into ghost towns. I hope that they stop this, or they change their minds, or God forbid, I hope the federal government actually comes in and says, stop it now. That is something I rarely ever wish, but I think that we've finally gotten to a point where, while Trump is doing what he should do, I think he just needs to put his foot down and say no. Again, this is why you've seen Trump supporting the protests to open the states back up rather than him directly doing anything, because he is doing what he should be doing. He is not overreaching. He is not trying to overreach. It's one of these times where people are arguing that there's inaction from the federal government, and they don't seem to realize, no, this is legally what the federal government is allowed to do without a complete and total overreach, which would be seen by many as a tyrannical act. We're getting to that point where it may just not have a choice in it. It may just have to happen. And I really hope not. I don't want to see these things escalate, is the issue, and I'm afraid that they're going to if they continue getting tighter and they continue holding down people like this. We're at a point where the unemployment is at completely unprecedented numbers, and that's largely because the lockdowns are still in effect. People can go back to work. They're just stuck in this case of limbo, effectively. And as much as these people will argue, oh well, you're just wanting to kill yourself or something to that effect. Uh, if they don't have money, they can't afford to eat. They will starve to death. They would rather take the chance of dying, of possibly getting the disease and then fighting against that, than not having anything, so they starve and die that way. And that seems to be the point that is missed a lot in this. But what do I know? I'm just a fucking idiot that's trying to bring common sense to these very political issues that should not be as fucking political as they are. This has heavily become a left versus right, a keep everything locked down until we've cured death versus open it up now, let people choose kind of thing. I don't know how this happened other than the fact that if Trump says one thing, we must do the opposite. That's the only way I can rationalize this in the grand scheme. I just want to see, I guess the best way to phrase this is a return to choice for people. If people choose to stay at home, if businesses choose to stay closed to protect people, that is their right. They have every option to do that, and I fully support them doing that. That's the thing, though. You're taking away the choice because they're afraid that people will make the wrong choice in their eyes. That's not up to you. That's up to the people. We elected you to make the big choices, but you are not supposed to take away our individual rights and civil liberties. And that's what's happening here. And I don't want to see a fucking civil war or a fucking revolt caused from all this. But every day I see these kind of restrictions, I see tensions build. I don't know how they don't. And I'm just waiting for the powder cake to blow, as it were. Just tone things down. I can get where you're coming from, but you need to tone it down. You need to come back to some level of rationality, because this is not going to end well. And I really don't want to see that scenario. Okay? This has been Math Machine calling for some level of sense. Boy, am I barking up the wrong tree when I'm talking to politicians. Peace out.